What tricks did the scifi programmer have in her programs to trick the inspecting warden, who wanted to know more about her friendship with Gwendolyn and Eddie Rise? Unbeknown to the entire Ark-Wogan community, Faith had come out and introduced herself to Gantu, requesting the teen to take full advantage of the Prian's cube privacy, and help her get back to her home of sorts. She pretended to be her sister Gwendolyn, in which her motorized wheelchair was having technical problems. Her companion Eddie Rise was being followed around by a horde of children, in which Eddie was throwing lollies out over the railing. And the small group of lads following Gantu were told to join in with the crowd to catch lollies and treat from Kaya's Navigating Crafts food stores.
Join in with the crowd to catch lollies and treat from Kia's Navigating Crafts food stores. Gantu was planning on gaining entry some way, and called off the watcher he had posted to the navigator to take 30-minute break. The facially deformed woman with anatomically legs missing left her son Gantu to go and check on the Ark's community festivities. Gantu's mother was allowed to live the rest of her life in space. Her age was approximately early 30s. Her position on board was higher than Gantu's wet nurses who breastfed the younger children. Gantu's never recognized the woman as his mother, the older he got. The baby was abandoned outside the Forbidden City's entrance in a bundle of leaves. Gania grew up in the Ark Children's Reserved section. After that, little is known about her pregnancy. Someone now deep sleeped in the Forbidden City had come out and murdered Gania's rapists. The acknowledgement of Gantu being grandson of Forbidden City's mafia leader was all there to know about the genetic connections. Now Gantu was replaced with a doppelganger, and overrated the crisis for now. For an overheard conversation connected the threads, Warden Myers wanted to know, as she wanted to close down the section of the ship Gantu ship-born children had claimed as their territory. The opium was not shared by Zoe-chan, who organized Gantu to be deep-sleeped inside the Prian's cube, and impersonator to take his place, so the change in the children brought on by doppelganger commanding the gang would bring cultural changes to the Ark, and sadistic Gantu on board. Time left would also mean the doppelganger could optimize the situation as much as possible.
The Ark was a place where each acting captain was given workload to order people under his command to carry out environmental and animal feeding tasks. Civilians were given destination areas to live in continental zone sleeping sections. Alpha section was privileged area, where the lower section was the Omega section. Gantu was Ark-born children's leader, who shared an area at the bow of the ship with other lower-ranked Omega communities. The Forbidden Cities section was part in the center of the deep space Voyager you kept away from, if told to do so, by any person that could cause you trouble. Not everyone had Guild Vault Computer Notifications Manager, who pigeonholed notes for a member of their guild to read, or be sent bulletins on their personal fort board panel. If you were one of the minorities, such as Manuwatu, whom was listed as the personal property of an unknown collector, the months before and doppelganger had taken over Gantu's persona. Warden Myers had been given information to get ready a number of custodians supervised cells for Gantu's group. The captain on the Spanish section was feeding her information about the cases of abuse to a number of the wards under Gantu's gang. The forced removal of number Gantu and his cronies was on the cards. Warden Myers had come to Manuwata's rescue a couple of nights ago, as the teens were going to cut his tendons on his lower legs. To display it was the leader Gantu in charge and not the blind indentured man. The kids had tied Manu up and whipped him with makeshift cattle whip. Furthermore, they had starved him for a number of days before the warden was told to intervene. Then Captain Russo asked Myers to nod, to let him sort it out. Warden Myers would not go against orders. The last information, Manu was in the wrong.
Gantu's mother was blind. Even Gania was ordered to be the blind lookout for the Prions Cube. To get there, she enjoyed using a skateboard to roll herself to the places she needed to go. Lying flat on the board and using her hands and arms to provide movement for her makeshift vehicle, Manu-Watu was magnate for the younger children, as they enjoyed his token company. Gardening with Manu and taking turns to sleep close to him in the shared nest. When the wet nurses shared the same attitudes, as Manu would lift the infirmed to thaw communal baths, and hold the invalid till they were positioned in the harness right. Gania pretended not to be interested in Manu. The conversation in the baths was about hamstring the opposition by tying up resources. Literally could happen to Manu if he didn't pick his game up. Gani's son was listening, and should have been on guard in the nest quarters.
Gantu was back from his classes, as Captain Deco was teaching him skills. Sword fighting title ships had funded Deco to many social events back on Earth in Spain. Gantu and Captain Deco bonded well, as they both had underlying similar intelligence and personality flaws that connected them both to the Ark's community, in the gambling dens, in which Captain Deco was winning this week, playing chess game on his personal fort board, to an anemones player who was betting high, for an Omega Section person. The board was reported missing months ago. An official Navy officer doing a sweep of the Ark did not find one of many missing items gone missing the past few months. The missing fort board was Manu-Watu's, and Gantu would have to pay for the board, being the sponsor of the blind worker in his care. All would change when Manu left his guard and a lot of the sleeping property was stolen.
Someone had put an contract on the mother, in which her deep sleep crib malfunctioned, and Diana, 45-year-old mother, was saved luckily but came onto active service few hundred years earlier than her daughters. Diana's uncle had seemingly woken up the same time Diana's mother came into service. The two later married, as it was Diana's father's brother, and Diana family grew in size, as her sister's children were additional descendants from the past 200 years time frame. Increased the Ark's online deep sleep crib storage human cargo units by 20 people. Diana was not an spoilt single child anymore, but an sister, auntie, and great-auntie and great-great-auntie. Officer Moore soon realized that Diana was the cause of the argument, which went as far that Diana had slept with her father's brother. Upset Diana, as they were both women military-trained people for active service positions. Diana had to pay part of her income to help recover the costs of her relatives, who were not sponsored at the start of the journey, but joined the journey as being part of the Ark's early shipborne population. Officer Moore had seen photos of many young women, which resembled Diana run candidly, and would be similar age to Diana when woken on the New World as well. The illusionist trickster and her sidekick were giving out umbrellas. The film crew were getting ready for an wet film rotation hour, and Officer Moore was given an coffee to drink by Zoe Chan. The children in the Ark watched though and window port that acted as Miro. The adult chaperoning them was Manu-Watu, who was still angry from being flogged by Gantu. His job was pulling proper cut along in case any of the little kids can't make it back to their quarters. Another chaperone was Gania, who watched Officer Moore through the window, and looked at the scifi trickster Zoe and her helper. Pointed out to the children that it was filming day, and they were not allowed to make too much noise. Gantu would be back soon and they would have to go back to the garden area, and finish their chores. As food grew in alternate ways, the range had to suit the need to pay the energy credit managers. As he'd cost Gantu unit over 3 months food rations plus more for the replacement items value for the bedding in the nest and 7 lost fort boards. Increased his indentured time by 12 months at least. He had idea that Gania and some of the kids that work with her had an hand in it. Her son Gantu was told not to damage Manus' legs by Warden Myers, who came in the last minute with squad of Protective Defense Force personnel, who'd rescued Manu and put him in the medical unit were Bob Myers. Even Tawley cleared Manu to go back to the unit he came from. Gainier had picked him up on the way to filming, and now he waited with the gang of children to watch the filming in the mess hall. His sight was slowing coming back. This part was hard to handle too, as Bob Myers removed his eye contact lens and new ones were placed in Maynard's eyes, in which someone was typing information for him to read. The energy of the children started to spread to all. As the Fifi trickster Zoe-chan appeared in their area, Zoe handed out some umbrellas and gave the kids the opportunity to help with the special effects. As the filming only required an trickster some of the time, as the program could be done from another room, cat is to look in as outsiders looking in. The kids enjoyed being sprayed by water, and Manu Wata kept his silence. As he was reading the information that was given to him in short bursts, he could see shadows, but he was now shown writing text that was explaining what he did wrong. As the culture on board the Ark was developed over 500 years, in which the children played an central role that allowed them to become independent. The writer informed Manu that liberties that Ganta had taken and hurt Manu were not taken lightly. Emergency personnel could come to his aid, eventually. Officer Diana was the person whom robbed them of the property in the nest sleeping section. Diana knew about Ganta being tutored by Digo. He propped Gainier on his leg and wiped her hair away from her face. There he felt the facial deformity, and Gainier grabbed his head and put his hand on her face to show him part of her identity on board the Ark. Gainier was blind. Shed managed to not let this part of herself be advertised to Manu, as the little children took people as they were and thought it all to be normal behavior. He took the capsule out his pocket, and Gainier read the inscripted braille note by touching her finger and reading the dots as language. Gainier was crying, and Manu asked why. My son Ganta has left us, and Fifi Trickster has taken his place. You Manu are to be new leader, and I am to help you in parts. She spoke facing the mirror and she whispered to Manu,